Julian Thorne stood frozen, his billion-dollar penthouse office silent save for the hum of the city 40 stories below. The security system, keyed to his biometrics and retinal scan, hadn't chimed. His executive assistant, programmed to the minute, had left exactly 14 minutes ago. The air was pressurized, filtered, sterile. Yet, standing by the obsidian desk, bathed in the cool blue glow of the holographic stock ticker, was a child. A small girl, perhaps 7, with meticulously neat blonde hair pulled into 2 tight braids. She was holding a single, crumpled piece of paper. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She looked, Julian noted with detached curiosity, utterly determined. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice impossibly clear and steady in the vast, soundproofed room. "You have to come with me. Now." Julian's gaze, which had managed global portfolios worth more than the GDP of small nations that very day, dropped to the paper she held. It wasn't a child's drawing. It was a photograph, a faded, dog-eared Polaroid. The man in the photo, smiling with a genuine, unguarded joy that Julian found repellent, had his arm around a laughing, beautiful woman, and the man, Julian realized with a cold spike of adrenaline, was him. Or rather, it looked exactly like him, down to the slight asymmetry of his left eye, but he was wearing a paint-smeared flannel shirt, and it was a life he had never, ever lived. "Security," Julian said, not to the girl but to the air. His voice was flat, an instrument of command. He tapped a near-invisible icon on his desk. Protocol Zeta. Nothing happened. The blue light of the ticker continued its silent crawl. The girl didn't flinch. "They can't hear you," she said as if stating the weather. "I used the service shaft, the old one from when the building was first built. The sensors don't cover the metal fatigue." Julian's blood ran colder. The building's schematics were a state secret, protected by layers of digital encryption. That a child, a 7-year-old in worn sneakers and clean but faded jeans, could not only know about the shaft, but use it, was an impossibility that bordered on an act of war. He analyzed her. Fair skin, bright blue eyes, no obvious signs of distress, other than the profound absurdity of her presence. He instinctively moved his hand toward the panic button beneath his desk, the one hard-wired directly to his private tactical team. "Who are you?" he demanded. The girl finally lowered the hand holding the photo. "My name is Maya," she said, "and I need a job." Julian almost laughed. The sound died in his throat. Of all the corporate espionage scenarios his team had drilled, 7-year-old seeking employment was not one of them. "A job," he repeated, spacing the words out. "You bypassed a biometric security system that cost $40 million to install. To ask for a job." Maya nodded, her expression severe. "It's for my mom. She's sick. The medicine. The medicine is too expensive. The landlord said we have 3 days. I'm a very hard worker. I can clean. I can file papers. I can draw. I can draw anything." She pushed the Polaroid across the desk. He said if I was ever in the worst trouble in the world, I should find you. He said you were the only one." Julian Thorne did not touch the photograph. He stared at it. The face. His face. The neatly trimmed stubble he currently wore was, in the photo, a slightly scruffier, more relaxed beard. His own short dark brown hair, styled with a clean side part and a low fade by his personal groomer every 72 hours, was longer on the man in the photo, perpetually falling into his eyes. But the bone structure was identical. It was not a deep fake. It was not a trick of the light. It was impossibly him. "Who?" Julian said, his voice dangerously soft. "Is he?" "That's my dad," Maya said, her voice dropping for the first time into a register of sorrow. His name is Leo. He's gone. He went to find a cure for Mama. Julian felt a sudden, unpleasant vertigo. This was a shakedown, a complex, theatrical, emotionally manipulative shakedown. It had to be. He looked back at the girl. She was small for her age, but her posture was perfect. She stood like a tiny soldier. "A job," Julian said, testing the word. "You break into the most secure private office in New York City. You risk juvenile detention, and your guardians, whoever they are, risk decades in federal prison. For minimum wage?" "I don't know what that means," Maya replied. "I just need enough. For the medicine. And the rent. And then I'll go. You won't even know I was here." She pointed again to the photo. "He said you would understand. He said you had to." Julian looked from the girl to the photo. He saw the woman laughing, her head thrown back. He saw the man, Leo, looking at her with an adoration so profound it was almost idiotic. Julian Thorne had never looked at anyone like that in his life. He had built an empire on the principle of emotional detachment. Love was a liability. Family was a negotiation. And this was a contamination. A breach. Yet he couldn't call security. Not yet. The girl had used the word father. She had claimed this doppelganger was her father, and that this thing that wore his face had pointed her, like a guided missile, directly at him. "Where is your mother?" Julian asked. Maya's shoulders relaxed just a fraction. It was the first sign of weakness she'd shown. "She's at home, in our apartment. She sleeps a lot. She coughs. A lot." He leaned forward, the Tom Ford suit shifting without a sound. "And this job. What precisely do you believe you can do for me?" Maya took a deep breath. "I told you, I can clean. But my real job, my best job, is watching. I see things people miss, like the loose panel in the shaft, like the way your security guard, the one in the lobby, rubs his left knee every time he stands up, which means he's older than he looks and his replacement knee is bothering him. Like the way you haven't blinked since I started talking." Julian's eye twitched. He hadn't blinked. He stared at her, this miniature anomaly. She was right. He hadn't. "You're observant," Julian conceded. The admission felt like losing a tooth. "That is a skill." He made a decision. It was irrational. It violated every protocol he had ever written, but the man in the photo demanded it. The face, his face, demanded an answer. "All right, Maya. You're hired." The girl's face flooded with a relief so potent it was almost painful to watch. "Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. When do I start? What do I clean?" Julian stood up, the full height of his elegant frame unfolding. He walked around the obsidian desk, stopping a few feet from her. He was immaculate, a figure of polished steel and expensive wool. She was a speck of dust that had somehow slipped through the filter. "Your job is simple," Julian said. "You are going to take me to your mother. You are going to tell me everything you know about that man." He pointed to the Polaroid. "And in return, I will stop the eviction. And I will pay for the medicine. We will call it a consultation fee." Maya looked suspicious. "You're giving me the money? Without me working?" "Your work," Julian said, turning toward the private elevator, "is providing data. The data is you, your mother, and him. That is the transaction. Do we have an agreement?" Maya hesitated. She was smart. She knew this was not a normal arrangement. She looked at the photo, then back at his cold, impassive face. He said you were sad. That you were the richest man in the world, but you were the saddest, too. He said you needed saving. Julian's hand froze on the elevator call button. "He said that?" "He drew you," Maya said, her voice quiet. He had a whole book of sketches. Of you, in your office, in your car, at parties. He called you the man in the glass castle. He was my dad. And you're his ghost. Julian turned. The polite boardroom predator was gone. My car, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. He drew me in my car? A black one, with the silver lady on the front, she said, describing his custom Rolls-Royce. He said you looked lonely. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper of compressed air. Julian Thorne stared at the 7-year-old girl who had just detonated his entire reality. He was not being scammed. He was being haunted. Come on, Maya, he said, his voice hoarse. Your employment begins now. The journey from Julian's glass tower to Maya's world was a descent, not just in altitude, but in reality. His Bentley, a customized Mulliner edition, was a hermetically sealed environment. The air was purified, the sound dampening so profound that the chaos of the city was reduced to a silent, frantic film. Julian drove himself. He never let anyone drive him unless it was a tactical necessity. Control was paramount. And as he drove, following the girl's quiet, precise directions, turn left here at the broken light. Go under the bridge. Stop by the store with the red dragon. He felt that control bleeding away. They left the gleaming spires of Manhattan, crossed the bridge into a borough he only saw on quarterly expense reports, and plunged into a labyrinth of decaying brick and flickering neon. The contrast between the child and the car was staggering. Maya sat perfectly still in the hand-stitched leather seat, her worn sneakers held centimeters above the lambswool carpet, as if she was afraid to contaminate it. You can put your feet down, Julian said, his eyes on the road. The street was narrow, slick with a recent, oily rain. People huddled in doorways, their faces illuminated in brief, harsh flashes of light from passing cars. Maya slowly lowered her feet. She touched the armrest, a piece of polished, burled walnut. It's smooth, she whispered, like water. Julian gripped the steering wheel. He was used to quiet. His life was a curated symphony of silence, punctuated by the polite, muted tones of business. This quiet was different. It was the quiet of a small, vigilant animal. Tell me about the sketches, Julian commanded, his voice unnaturally loud in the confined space. The drawings of me. Maya looked at her hands, which were clasped tightly in her lap. He had a special book. It was leather, with a string. He used to go out. He'd say he was going to see the other side. I thought he meant the park. He'd come back and draw. He drew you a lot. He said you were the proof. I asked, proof of what? And he said, proof that it all went wrong. Julian's knuckles were white. Wrong? What went wrong? He said you were never supposed to be in the castle, and he was never supposed to be. Here, he said there was a mix-up, a long time ago. They stopped at a red light. A man, his face gaunt, tapped on Julian's window, his hand outstretched. Julian ignored him. The light turned green. A mix-up, Julian repeated, his mind racing. This was diverging from a shakedown and into something far more intricate. A delusion. A shared psychosis. Here, Maya said, pointing. Stop here. Julian pulled the multi-$100,000 car to the curb in front of a tenement building that looked one stiff breeze away from collapse. The graffiti on the walls was the most vibrant thing about it. The lobby door was missing. You live here, he stated. It wasn't a question. Apartment 3B, she said. She got out of the car. Julian sat for a moment, the engine purring. He was wearing a $7,000 suit. His shoes were handmade Italian leather. He was about to walk into a building that was likely condemned. He activated the car's full security lockdown, a system designed to repel bullets, and got out. The air hit him immediately. It was thick, smelling of damp, old garbage, and a cloying sweetness from a nearby bakery. Maya was waiting for him by the stairwell. The elevator was a cage of rusted metal, a single, flickering bulb illuminating a floor slick with something. "We take the stairs," Maya said. "The elevator doesn't always stop on the right floor." They climbed. The concrete steps were worn in the middle, sloping dangerously. On the third floor, the hallway was a narrow tube, painted a virulent shade of green, the paint peeling in long strips. Maya stopped at a door marked 3B. The wood was splintered near the lock, the remnants of a previous forced entry. Maya pulled a key on a piece of string from around her neck and opened the door. "Mama?" she called softly. "I'm home. I brought a guest." Julian stepped inside and stopped. The apartment was tiny. A kitchenette, a small living space, and a beaded curtain leading to what he presumed was a bathroom. But it was immaculate. Where the hallway had smelled of despair, this small space smelled of lemon polish and soap. The floor, though old linoleum, was scrubbed clean. And the walls. The walls were covered in art. Dozens of sketches, charcoal and pencil, taped over the peeling paint. Portraits of Maya. Portraits of the city. And, in a place of honor, over a small, wobbly table, was a large, framed charcoal portrait of him. It wasn't a sketch from a distance. It was a formal portrait. His face, the one from the boardroom, stared back at him with a haunting, photorealistic intensity. But the artist had drawn his eyes not with the cold blue they were, but as empty, hollow voids. "Leo?" A voice, thin as paper, rustled from the corner. Julian's eyes snapped away from the portrait. In the dim light, on a small cot pushed against the wall, a woman was lying. She was a ghost, a pale shadow swallowed by a nest of worn blankets. This, Julian realized with a shock, was the vibrant, laughing woman from the Polaroid. Her skin was ashen, her hair lank. "Mama, this is Mr. Thorne," Maya said, rushing to the bedside. He gave me a job. He's going to help." Julian stood, rooted to the spot, a titan of industry trapped in a shoebox. He felt profoundly, offensively large. His suit was too new, his shoes too loud on the worn floor. The woman, Clara, struggled to prop herself up on one elbow. Her eyes, huge and sunken in her pale face, tried to focus on him. She squinted. And then, her breath hitched. It wasn't a cough. It was a gasp, a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. "Leo?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Her hand, thin and trembling, reached out to him. "Leo, my God, you came back. You changed." Julian could not move. He could not speak. He saw the flicker of desperate, impossible hope light up her dying face. She wasn't seeing Julian Thorne, billionaire. She was seeing the man in the photo. She was seeing her Leo. Maya, standing by the bed, looked at Julian, her eyes wide, her small hands clenched. "Mama, no," Maya said softly. That's Mr. Thorne." Clara's face crumpled. The light extinguished itself as if a switch had been thrown. "Oh," she said, the single word saturated with a universe of disappointment. She sank back into the pillows, turning her face to the wall. "Of course, I'm sorry. Forgive me. You look." She was interrupted by a deep, racking cough. It was a terrible, dry, scraping sound that seemed to tear at her from the inside. Maya rushed to pour a glass of water from a pitcher. She held it to her mother's lips. Julian finally found his voice. It's just Clara," Maya said, not looking at him. She was focused on her mother. Julian looked around the room. He saw the medicine bottles on the nightstand. They were generic, cheap, and almost empty. Tacked to the back of the front door, partially hidden by one of Maya's drawings, was a neon pink piece of paper. An eviction notice. Final warning. 3 days. The job, Julian said, his voice a harsh metallic sound in the small sick room. Maya, you are to tell me about your father. Clara went very still. She didn't turn, but Julian knew she was listening. He was an artist, Maya said, her voice taking on a rehearsed quality. He painted. He said he painted the sky. He did restorations, old churches, ceilings. He taught me to draw. He taught me to mix colors. He loved Mama. Where is he? Julian demanded. He abandoned you. He left you here sick and about to be homeless. No, Maya's voice was sharp. He didn't. He went to find the cure. Mama got the dust lung from the old building. The doctors said. They said there was no medicine. But Leo found a place. A clinic. In the mountains, where the air is clean. He said they used a blue light, and it healed everything. He sold all his big paintings. He took the money. He went to get the cure for her. He was supposed to come back. Julian processed this. Dust lung, asbestosis, mesothelioma, something from the decaying infrastructure of their lives. And this blue light clinic. It screamed of quackery, of predators preying on the desperate. When did he leave? 6 months ago, Maya said. The letters stopped. The money. The money he left ran out. But he's coming back. I know he is. Clara let out a small, broken sound. He's not coming back, baby. He's gone. He is, Maya insisted, her voice rising with the first crack of childish panic Julian had heard. He's not, and Mama is sick, and I needed help, so I found him. She pointed, not at the drawing, but at Julian. I found the ghost. Julian looked at the portrait on the wall, the hollow eyes. He looked at the sick woman in the bed. He looked at the eviction notice. He took his phone from his pocket. It was a satellite-enabled, encrypted device that cost more than the apartment building. His security chief, Marcus, answered on the first ring. Sir. Marcus, Julian said, his voice flat. I am sending you an address. I want 2 men, plain clothes, outside this building in 10 minutes. No one in, no one out. They are not to be seen. I want a wire transfer. No cash. $10,000. Delivered to this room. Now. Sir, the threat level. The threat, Julian cut him off, is a landlord. Execute. He hung up. He turned to Maya. This is your first task, your first job. You will stay here. You will accept the package from my man. You will pay the landlord. You will buy the medicine, all of it. Maya was staring at him, her mouth slightly open. But, what's your job? Julian looked at the portrait. My job, he said, is to find out who Leo was, and why he has my face. He turned and walked out, his leather shoes echoing on the concrete stairs, leaving the scent of his $1,000 cologne to mingle with the smell of sickness and despair. He did not, however, go back to his office. He did not go back to his sterile, controlled world. He sat in his Bentley across the street from the tenement, watching the shadows lengthen. He was a man who hated puzzles he couldn't solve, and this was the most complex, most personal puzzle of his life. He watched as one of his men, dressed as a courier, entered the building. He waited. An hour later, Marcus called back. Sir, we have a preliminary analysis based on the name Leo and the address. The tenant is Clara Rossi. The child is Maya Rossi. No father listed on the birth certificate, but we cross-referenced tenants looking for adult males. And, Julian's voice was tight, a Leo Boriani lived there until 6 months ago. No credit history, paid in cash. Social security number doesn't exist. He's a ghost. A ghost, Julian mused. looking at the hollow eyes in the portrait he could still see in his mind. No, Marcus. Not a ghost. A mirror. I am sending you a file. It's a photograph. I want facial recognition. Run it against every database on Earth. Interpol, ancestry sites, medical records, and, specifically, run it against sealed adoption records. I want to know who I am. Sir? Marcus's voice was laced with confusion. Just do it, Marcus, Julian said and ended the call. He stared at the window of 3B. The light was on. He had just bought them time. But as he sat in the opulent silence of his car, Julian Thorne, the man who had everything, felt a cold, unfamiliar emotion settle in his chest. It was not anger. It was not curiosity. It was a profound, aching void. The man in the glass castle, he thought. He was right. The next 48 hours were a fracture in Julian's meticulously structured life. He did not go to the office. He postponed a $10 billion merger arbitration. He sat in his penthouse, the one Maya had breached, and stared at the data streams Marcus fed him. The money he had sent was a stopgap, a bandage on a mortal wound. He knew this. He had also, without asking permission, dispatched his personal physician, Dr. Aris, to the apartment. Aris, a man accustomed to treating the worried well in sterile, multi-million-dollar clinics, had called Julian back, his voice shaken. It's advanced, Julian. Interstitial lung disease, aggressive fibrosis. Looks like chronic exposure to, well, everything. Asbestos, black mold, silica. She's drowning on dry land. Prognosis, Julian demanded, pacing his 41st floor office. Weeks, a month maybe. The medication she's been getting is palliative, but it's the wrong kind. It's treating symptoms, not the cause. She needs specialized care, a transplant ideally. But in her condition, she's not a candidate. Her body is too weak. Her will is gone, Julian. It's like she's already decided to die. Julian looked out the window. The city sprawled below him, a glittering circuit board of lives he didn't care about. Until now. Make her a candidate, Julian ordered. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs. Move her. Bring her to the Thorne Pavilion. Julian, it's not about money. We can't just give her a lung. And she refuses to be moved. She says she's waiting for him. For Leo. She won't leave the apartment. Julian hung up. The frustration was a physical, acidic burn in his throat. He had built an empire on the premise that everything and everyone had a price. This dying woman in her crumbling apartment was refusing his help because she was waiting for a man who had his face. Then Marcus's call came through. Sir, we have a hit. Sir, I think you need to sit down. I am sitting, Julian lied. He was standing, rigid. The facial recognition found a match, a 997% genetic match. We had to use a judicial override to unseal the records. It was a closed adoption, sir. From the St. Jude's Foundling Home, 38 years ago. Julian's breath caught. 38. You were adopted, sir, by the Thorne family. The records were sealed. To protect the Thorne name from the circumstances of the birth, the document says. Julian sank into his chair. The glass walls of his office seemed to ripple. Adopted, his entire life, his legacy, his identity, was a construction, a purchase. And the match? Julian whispered. A twin brother, sir. Left at the Foundling Home. He was not adopted. He entered the state foster system. He aged out. His name was Leo Boreani. The room was silent. Julian could hear the blood rushing in his ears. A twin. A brother. A life that had run parallel to his, separated by a single, arbitrary decision. One was given the glass castle. The other was left in the dust. Where is he? Julian demanded, his voice thick. That is the difficult part, sir. Maya was right. He was chasing a cure. He sold every piece of art he had, liquidated his life, and took the money to a clinic. The Aura Med clinic in the Swiss Alps. They practice something called photodynamic therapy. The blue light. Quackery, Julian spat. Yes, sir, complete fraud. They prey on the terminally ill. We tracked Leo's passport. He flew to Zurich. He took a bus to the clinic. He checked in. And then, he vanishes, sir. He never checked out. A cold dread, colder than his boardroom demeanor, settled on Julian. What does that mean, vanishes? He confronted the clinic's director. We pulled Swiss police reports. There was an altercation. Leo accused them of being charlatans. They had him removed from the premises. He was last seen walking down the mountain pass from the clinic, in a snowstorm. 6 months ago, the local police ruled it. Death by exposure or suicide. They closed the case. Julian stood up. He walked to the window. So, Leo was dead. His brother, the man who had sketched him from afar, the man who had loved Clara and Maya, had frozen to death on a Swiss mountain, robbed of his last dollar, while he, Julian, had probably been closing a deal worth more than that entire clinic. The injustice of it was so profound, so cosmic, it was almost laughable. He's gone, Julian said to the empty room. He had found his ghost, only to learn he was the ghost. He was the one who was still walking. Sir, Marcus's voice was hesitant. What are your orders? Julian looked at the city. Book a flight to Zurich. I want my Alpine tactical team spun up. I want every asset we have focused on that clinic. I'm going to buy it. Sir, buy it? And then I'm going to burn it to the ground, Julian said. But first, I have a job to do. He didn't take the Bentley. He took a nondescript black sedan from his security pool. He didn't wear the suit. He had his assistant retrieve the clothes, the ones he kept in a sealed archive, the ones belonging to his adoptive father. A simple, dark wool sweater. Trousers, not jeans. He couldn't go that far, but not the sharp crease of his usual attire. He messed up his hair. He looked in the mirror. He still saw Julian Thorne. But the edges were blurred. It would have to do. When he knocked on the door of 3B, Maya opened it. She looked at him, her eyes widening, taking in the change. Mr. Thorne? He walked past her. The room was heavier, the air thicker with the scent of sickness. Clara was asleep, or unconscious. Her breathing was shallow, a faint rattling whisper. She's worse, Maya whispered, her lower lip trembling. Dr. Aris came. He gave her a shot. He said to be brave. Julian looked at the woman who had loved his brother, the woman his brother had died trying to save. He had come here to tell them the truth, to tell Maya her father was dead, to tell Clara her hope was gone. He was going to offer them money, a new life, a hospital wing. Anything. He was going to fix this with his checkbook. He sat in the one rickety chair by the bed. Clara, he said. Her eyes didn't open. Clara, it's Julian. Nothing. She doesn't wake up much, Maya said, tears finally welling in her bright eyes. I think she's leaving me. Like he did. The little girl, the tiny, brave soldier, finally crumpled. She buried her face in the worn blanket on her mother's bed and began to sob, a heartbreaking, silent shaking. Julian sat, frozen. He was a man of action, of solutions. He could liquidate companies, move markets, depose governments. But he had no protocol for this, no protocol for a weeping child and a dying woman. Please, Maya wept into the blanket. Please, Mama, don't go. Please. Clara's breathing hitched. A single tear rolled from the corner of her closed eye. She was in there. She could hear. She was just letting go. Julian looked at the child. He looked at the woman. He looked at the portrait on the wall. You were never supposed to be in the castle. He was never supposed to be here. His brother's words, relayed by the child. Proof that it all went wrong. And then, Maya looked up, her face streaked with tears, her eyes suddenly filled with a terrifying, brilliant, desperate idea. You look just like him, she whispered, her voice trembling. She thought you were him. Julian went cold. Maya. Don't. Please, the girl begged, scrambling off the cot and grabbing his hand. Her small fingers were surprisingly strong. She needs him. She doesn't need you. She doesn't need Mr. Thorne. She needs Leo. She's dying because he's not here. That's deceptive, Maya, Julian said, his voice rough. It's a lie. Is it? She pleaded, her eyes searching his. Is it a lie? You're his brother. You have his face. He's gone. He's not coming back. But you're here. Maybe. Maybe this is your job. The one I came to give you. Please. Pretend. He stared at her. The audacity. The sheer, insane, emotional logic of it. To impersonate a dead man, to trick a dying woman into living. It was monstrous. It was, perhaps, the only thing that would work. He was at war with himself. The cold, rational billionaire versus the brother. The man who had his face. He thought of Leo, freezing on a mountain. His last thoughts of this woman, this child. He thought of his own empty, sterile life. The glass castle. Julian Thorne looked at his hands, smooth, manicured. He looked at the portrait. Leo's hands were covered in paint and charcoal. He stood up. He walked to the bed. He looked down at Clara. Her face was peaceful, resigned. He made the choice. He unbuttoned the top button of his sweater. He ran a hand through his hair, deliberately making it fall across his forehead, the way it did on the man in the photo. He took a deep breath. He sat on the edge of the bed. He took Clara's thin, cold hand in his. Her skin was like paper. Clara, he said. His voice was different. He pitched it lower, softer, rougher. He wasn't Julian Thorne, he was someone else. Starlight. Clara's eyes fluttered. That one word. The word Maya had told him. He called her his Starlight. Her eyes, clouded with sickness, opened. They focused, blurry, on his face. Leo, she breathed. It was barely a sound. I'm here, Julian said, his own voice breaking, the lie catching in his throat. I'm here, my love. I got lost. I got so lost. But I'm back. I thought you... Shh, he said, smoothing her hair back. I'm here. I'm not leaving again, ever. I found the cure. He had to improvise. It wasn't the blue light, it was you. It was always you. But you have to fight, Clara. You have to fight for me. You have to come back to me. Fight for Maya. He looked at the small child, who was watching, breathless. Her hands clasped over her mouth. Clara's gaze shifted. She saw Maya. She saw the man holding her hand. A faint, faint smile touched her lips. Leo, she whispered. You came home. Her eyes closed, but this time it was different. Her breathing, which had been a shallow rattle, seemed to, deepen, to stabilize. On the small, cheap pulse oximeter on her finger, the number, which had been hovering at a dangerously low 82, flickered. 83. 84. Julian Thorne, the imposter, the ghost, sat on the bed, holding his brother's life in his hands. He looked at Maya. The little girl was not crying anymore. She was watching him with an expression of profound, terrible awe. He had done it. He had lied. And it was working. The transformation was not immediate. It was a slow, agonizing crawl back from the abyss. The lie once told had to be lived. Julian Thorne did not go to Switzerland. He sent Marcus. He sent his entire legal and tactical team with one directive: ruin them. And they did. The Auramed clinic was shuttered, its assets frozen, its directors arrested for fraud and manslaughter, all within 72 hours. Marcus's team, scouring the mountain, found a small, unmarked grave under a drift of snow. Leo Boriani was brought home, but Julian could not tell them. Not yet. Clara's life hung by the thread of the lie he had woven. He moved them. He didn't ask this time. He simply had Dr. Aris and a private ambulance team arrive. They were not taken to a hospital. They were taken to the safe house apartment. A penthouse, floors below his own, but in a different, more private building. It was designed for visiting dignitaries, sterile and luxurious, with its own medical wing. Clara, weak but lucid, protested. "Leo, this isn't us. It's like his world." She pointed to the window, to the Thorn Tower, visible in the distance. "It's temporary," Julian lied, his voice the Leo voice, which he was perfecting. "It's a gift from a patron who bought my art, just until you're strong." He lived a double life. By day, he was Julian Thorne, a phantom in his own company, ruling his empire via encrypted video calls, his voice the familiar, cold monotone. His board noted his new, obsessive focus, his ruthlessness. He was liquidating assets, pouring hundreds of millions into a new foundation, the Boriani Rossi Institute for Lung Disease. But in the evenings, he would change. The suits came off, the wool sweater, and eventually a flannel shirt, which he had his assistant purchase, finding the texture abrasive but necessary, went on. He would enter the safe house penthouse, and he would become Leo. Maya was his accomplice, his 7-year-old director. She would correct him. "No," she'd whisper when they were in the kitchen. Daddy always hummed when he made coffee. He held the mug with 2 hands. Julian would nod, and he would hum. He would hold the mug with 2 hands. He learned to draw. Maya taught him. He sat with her for hours, and she showed him shading and perspective. His first drawings were technical, precise, and lifeless. "No, Leo," she'd say. "You have to. Feel it. Draw the sad. Draw the happy." He was a quick study. He learned to loosen his grip. He learned to see the feeling instead of the lines. He was, after all, Leo's brother. It was in his blood. Clara grew stronger. The best medicine, the best food, the 24-hour nursing. And the hope. Worked miracles. The will to live, as Dr. Aris called it, had returned. She could sit up. She could walk to the window. She would hold Leo's hand and tell him about her day. Julian, the man who had never had a real conversation in his life that wasn't a negotiation, found himself listening. He learned about her childhood. He learned about how she met Leo at an art fair where he was selling sketches for $10. He learned about their dreams. They were so small. A little house, a garden, a studio for him, a window for her to sit in. Julian, who owned properties on 3 continents, felt a sickening, hollow jealousy for the life his dead brother had lived. The transplant became a possibility. With Clara's strength returning, and with Julian's new institute funding the research, a groundbreaking experimental procedure, a partial donor transplant using new growth factor therapies, was scheduled. Julian, of course, was the donor. His blood, his tissue, his face. He was the perfect match. Dr. Aris performed the surgery. It was a success. Weeks passed. Clara was recovering. Her color returned. Her laugh, the one from the Polaroid, started to reappear. She was walking. She was vibrant, and she was watching him. The lie, which had been a desperate necessity, was becoming an unbearable weight. One evening, they were on the balcony of the penthouse. The city glittered below. Maya was inside, asleep. Clara, wrapped in a soft blanket, looked at him. She had been quiet for a long time. "You're not him?" she said, her voice soft, not an accusation, just a statement. Julian froze. The Leo persona evaporated. He was just Julian. "Ha, Clara? He's gone, isn't he?" she asked, her eyes searching his. He looked at her, at this woman he had grown to. He wasn't sure what the word was. Respect. Admire. Care for. He couldn't lie. Not anymore. He nodded. Yes. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. She didn't sob. "I've known," she whispered. For a few weeks. Maybe I always knew, in the back of my mind. It was the way you hold your fork, the way you analyze Maya's drawings instead of just feeling them, the way you look at the city, like you own it, not like you want to paint it. "Clara," he said, his voice his own, hoarse. I am Julian Thorne. Leo was my brother, my twin." He told her everything, the adoption, the search, the clinic, the grave on the mountain. She listened, her hand finding his. I did it to save you," he finished lamely. "I know," she said. She squeezed his hand. You have his eyes, but your heart. I think you have the heart he always deserved. He died trying to save me, and he sent you to finish the job." "I lied to you," Julian said, the guilt overwhelming him. "You saved me," Clara corrected. The lie was just the medicine, Julian. Leo, it doesn't matter. You saved us." Maya came out onto the balcony, rubbing her eyes. "I had a dream," she said, walking straight to Julian. He, without thinking, lifted her up, settling her on his lap. It was a Leo move, but it felt like his own. "What did you dream, little one?" Julian asked. "I dreamed Daddy came back," she said, leaning her head against his chest. "He gave me a hug. And then he pointed to you. And he said, 'It's okay, he's one of us now.'" Julian's throat closed. He looked at Clara over the top of Maya's blonde hair. Clara was smiling. It wasn't the sad smile of grief. It was a new smile, a smile of beginning. The ending wasn't what anyone expected. Julian Thorne didn't just go back to his glass castle. He combined them. The Boriani Rossi Institute became his life's work. He found he had no more patience for hostile takeovers. He had more important work to do. He, Clara, and Maya moved out of the city. They bought a small house, a house with a garden, a house with a big window for Clara, and a studio. Julian started to paint. His work was terrible at first, technical, precise, and cold. But Maya would sit with him, correcting his feeling. Gradually, his art changed. It became warmer. He wasn't Leo. He would never be Leo. He was Julian, but he was no longer the man in the glass castle. He was just a man. Finally home. Thank you for watching. We hope this story touched your heart and reminded you that family isn't always about the blood you share, but the life you build. If you were moved by this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope. Let us know in the comments, what does family mean to you? Join us next time for another story that will change the way you see the world.